This you can read through. I don't need to go over the details, but that's how the Brazilian culture is. Once you get to Brazil in 1 hour, you'll be accustomed to these cultural aspects of meeting and greeting people. So greetings. We kiss a lot here. We shake hands all the time, and we hug. This is a very touching society. In terms of timing and scheduling, the problem is the bad traffic. Even though we have Google Maps and Waze everywhere, and everyone is using those, it's hard to predict the time of your arrival. Let's say a few days in advance. You know, upfront if you're going to be a few minutes late or early when you're driving. But usually you have to plan in leaving, let's say, an interval between meetings of approximately 1 hour, because you never know how bad the traffic can be. Executives usually arrive at 7 and arrive at 9 a.m. and leave at 7 p.m. So it's a long day. And in between, we have business lunches. They last like, if you are in a business lunch, it can take up to 2 hours or 3 hours. But if it's just lunch, it's going to be like 30 minutes or so. So it's very complicated to move around in metropolitan areas. So we schedule up to 4 meetings a day. But ideally, I would go with 3 meetings per day. I think that's a good number of meetings to have if you want to have a solid conversation and go over details. Next slide, please. So body language, this in some cultures, this is not common, but eye-to-eye contact is very important. So you feel that you're being listened by the other person, and then you get to know that the other person is understanding what you're saying. So eye-to-eye contact is very important. It's never challenging. Handshake, as I mentioned in the very beginning, is very common. Beginning at the end of meetings, we do this all the time. Business cards. This is very interesting. When we go to trade shows, we usually bring a stack of business cards, like 50 business cards per show at least, that we go, because we have to exchange cards with everyone we meet. So, and that's expected. So when you come to Brazil, please bring a nice stack of cards, and bring more than you usually bring. Otherwise, you're going to be short of them. Well, it's very common in business meetings that you're served coffee and water every time. So everywhere you go, people will offer you coffee and water, and this is something like it's very cultural. It's something that it's something to please the guest. So be prepared. You don't need to drink coffee all the time. You can refuse, but that's fine. After a few cups, you'll be fine. Coffee is not that strong. I mean, for us, it's diluted and it has a lot of sugar. It's very, very sweet. And uh, people stand close together when conversing or standing in lines. Yes, that's very common. If you're taking any public transportation, be prepared, because people will come closer, because public transportation may get packed in the big cities. And people talk all the time. We have a very friendly atmosphere in Brazil. People talk to each other. So this is a good side of the Brazilian culture. Next slide, Kim. Uh, corporate and culture. Don't be surprised if your arm or back are touched. So we try to speak with our hands like Italians do, and that's part of the European heritage that we have. But then when it comes to language, this could be a problem. English is spoken by just 20% of the executives. And so in cases where companies come and don't speak English, so we offer translators to accompany those companies to the meetings. So this could be a good idea, and we can provide drivers and interpreters to go with the companies and meet with their prospects. Some people ask me, okay, but I speak Spanish. I took Spanish lessons in school for 10 years. Can I do well in Brazil? Yes and no. Usually, people in South America, Spanish speaking people in South America, they fully understand Portuguese because they, they, the sounds are similar, and somewhat they absorb the culture by coming to Brazil, by visiting Brazil, by meeting with Brazilians in their respective countries. But if that person is not comfortable in dealing in Spanish and Portuguese at the same time, this could be a challenge, because it's very normal when Brazilians notice that the other party speaks Spanish and is not understanding. They try to switch to Portuñol. That's a language that is created, uh, let's say, out of the blue, and people try to switch words between Spanish and Portuguese, and that becomes a mess. So it's very difficult to hold a conversation in Portuñol if you're not familiar with the words. So this is something that definitely we can help and gauge how you can do business and how you can communicate in Brazil. So, and we suggest topics for discussions when you are, let's say, breaking the ice. So, soccer is a good topic to talk about. Family, music, that's fine. But we never go personal. We never ask about how old you are or how much money you're making, if you're married or not married, because this implies that you're being too intrusive to the other person. So you can ask those things in the second or third time that you meet with that person. Next slide, please. So, as I said, we exchange business cards in the first meeting that we have. And the second topic is very, very annoying to some people because interruptions are really constant. Secretaries, assistants come to the meeting room and sometimes they interrupt. Or when you're talking, somebody will jump in and start talking at the same time. But this is pretty acceptable. This is part of the cultural, let's say, environment. Uh, Negotiations happen during mealtime because this is the time when you have already discussed all the topics during your formal meeting. Then you go to lunch with that person, and then you start talking about topics that were not covered or they doubts that came out after the meeting. And usually at the end, we try to summarize, putting together like a next steps plan. So what are the next plans? What are you going to do? When are you going to send me an email? When you're going to send me a proposal? And what should we do? And this is something usually done at the end of the meals. What to wear? It's important to dress conservatively, because if this is the first time that you meet with a person, some years ago, we had a commissioner who came to Brazil, and he thought that we were wearing flower shirts, and that was a disaster because he was meeting with government officials. They're always in dark suits and ties, and that creates some kind of embarrassment on his end. So when you're coming for business meetings, dress conservatively, uh, with a suit, preferably, or if not, with a polo or any long sleeve shirt. That's fine, but don't go beyond that. So, and then at the last paragraph, I say that when you're visiting a Brazilian home, it's common practice to bring like a bottle of wine or flowers or something that express your gratitude in being invited to their homes. Next slide, please. So relationship. So usually business is done face to face and people to people. And when people leave, usually they bring with them the contact information. So even though this is good, it, it plays on your end that you need to keep in contact with that person, with that company all the time. So if the person who used to be your contact leaves the company, then you can ask who his or her predecessor, his successor is, and then you can talk and go back to the past and recover the relationship. But this is very important, that you keep a very good relationship with your client. Uh, Brazil is a large country, and the size of the Brazilian territory is equivalent to to the to the continental U.S. So traveling from south to north can take up to four hours and a half. So it's very far away, and the business culture is different from the south to the north. The this the southern part of Brazil was colonized by Europeans, so we have lots of Germans, Spanish, Portuguese, Italian descent in the southern part of Brazil. In the state of São Paulo, this is the place where immigrants came from all over the world. We have the Europeans, we have North Americans, we have Asians. Everybody met here, and so we have a melting pot of cultures. Rio is pretty much the same, and then northern part of Brazil, as we go, you see more and more a relaxed atmosphere. But it doesn't mean that people are do business in a more relaxing way. In my opinion, it's easier to do business in Sao Paulo and southern part of Brazil than doing business in the northern part of Brazil, because these people tend to focus on local suppliers, so on regional aspects of doing business. So if you have plans to enter the Brazilian market, focus first in Sao Paulo, and the second focus will be in southern part of Brazil. Uh, Last slide, the last paragraph says Brazilian business is hierarchical. Yes, so you can talk to a nice person, you can have a very nice conversation, but the decision is going to be made by the number one in the company. So you have to walk your way through, and you have to convince everyone in the pyramid that you have a good service or product to offer. Next.